Hey, ladies and gentlemen, back again for what it says day 21 in the thing because the police interview is from some day. I'll fix it. But today's actually day 22, and I'm going to do the entire uh, police interview, and I'll tell you when this is from. This is from the 5th of August, 2023, and it was shown to the jury. It's pre recorded, what they call DVD recorded, and it is conducted at the Wonthaggi Police Station on Saturday, the 5th of August, 2023. And the people that are present are Erin Patterson, Detective Senior Constable David Martin Alcade, and Detective Leading Senior Constable Eppingstall. Okay, so let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So in question one, Erin is asked a question from Eppingstall, and it says, Erin, do you agree the time is now 4:41 p.m.? And he says it's by his watch. And she says, yep. And they say, could you please state your full name and address for me? And she says, my full name is Erin Trudy Patterson at Redacted in Leongatha. And they say, all right, Erin, I intend to interview you today in relation to the death of two people, being Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson. Before continuing, I must inform you that you do not have to say or do anything, but anything you say or do is being recorded and may be used in evidence. And she says, okay. And then they say, do you understand that information? And she says, yeah. And they say, all right, I must inform you of your following rights. You may communicate with or attempt to communicate with a friend or relative and tell that person of your whereabouts. And she says, okay. They say this is here in the next question. You may communicate with or attempt to communicate with a legal practitioner. If you're not an Australian citizen or permanent resident here in Australia, you may communicate with or attempt to communicate with the consular office of your country of which you are a citizen. She says, okay. Eppingstall says, do you understand all of these rights? And she says, yep. They say, do you wish to exercise any of these rights before we proceed with the interview? And she just sort of shakes her head. And he says, well, I need a verbal response from you. And she says, no, sorry, no, I don't. So, no, I don't want to exercise any of those rights. And he says, that's all right. Now I'll just confirm with you that you've had an opportunity to speak to a solicitor. And she says, yep. And he says, but before this interview commenced. And she says, yep. And he goes, okay. And you're happy with that? And she says, yep. So let me just set the scene for you. The video that we got to watch in front of the that was presented to the jury, it's almost a side angle, and you see Erin on one side, Detective Eppingstall on the other, and you see her being asked these questions. Well, he's sort of all the way over onto the left, but you see Erin there and giving her replies to the detective, and we're going to run through some of those now. And it says, all right, I also remind you that your rights are with you for the entire time that you're with us. And they both mention that that's okay. And they say, okay, so if you decide later on you want to exercise any of these rights, just let me know. And she says, sure. And he says, we'll do that, all right. He says, what is your age and date of birth? She says, I'm 48. That was at the time in 2023. And she says, I was born in 1974. They ask, are you an Australian citizen? And she says, yes. They say, are you a permanent resident here in Australia? And she says, well, I was born here. I live here. I'm a resident of Australia. And he says, yeah, yeah. And they say, she sort of asks, is that what you want? And he says, yeah, that's fine. They say, are you of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent? She says, no. And they say, what is your mobile number, Erin? And Erin replies, "Oh 04 redacted." And then they say, "Do you have an email address?" And she says, "Yeah, it's redacted." And they say, "Okay, now as we've discussed earlier, we've been together for a few hours now. It was after 11:30 that we came to your house today." And she says, "Mhm." And they say, "We want to discuss the deaths of Heather Wilkinson and Gail Patterson with you today." And she says, "Yep." They say, "When we were at our house earlier, we discussed that you hadn't really been kept in the loop. It had come to news to you that Heather and Gail had both passed away." And he says, following eating at your house, Donald, Ian, Gail, and Heather all became so ill that they ultimately ended up in ICU at both the Dandenong Hospital and then moved to the Austin Hospital. All right. Following that, they had a deterioration in their condition, and they became so ill that their livers have failed. All right. And and she says okay to that. And he says here, Donald underwent a transplant last night, and his condition is extremely critical as of last report. And she says, okay. And he says, Heather and Gail have passed away, all right. In relation to Ian, I don't have a current prognosis into where he's at. As of late yesterday, the diagnosis isn't great for him either, all right. We're trying to understand what made him so ill. And Erin says, And they say, do you understand? And she says, yeah. And he says, do you understand why we're asking these questions? And she says, yeah. And he said, we're trying to understand why you're not that ill. And she sort of goes, And they say, so do you understand why we're interviewing you here today? And she says, yep, I do. And he says, he just goes, yeah. And she says, but I'm sure you understand too. Like I've never been in a situation like this. And I have been very, very helpful with the health department through the week because I wanted to help that side of things as much as possible because I do want to know what happened. So I've given them as much information as they've asked for and offered up all the food, all the information about where that food came from. And he says, I fully understand that, all right? And then they say, all right, at the house, and I must say this for the record again, you were very helpful at the house. And you did point out a couple of things for us that will help with our investigation, mainly the fruit platter that you said that Heather bought for you, well, brought over, and the gravy in the fridge in the pantry that you said was from the night and that you kept on the advice from the health department. And she says, yep. And he says, well, so thank you for that. You also pointed out a recipe book on the counter and referred me to a page 250 odd, a recipe for a beef Wellington. And she sort of goes, mm-hmm. And he says, you indicated that was the recipe that you cooked. And she sort of agrees with that. And then they say, okay, all right. On what we saw at your address in Leongatha, all right, we didn't see a lot of food that was from Asian grocers or Indian grocers or those kind of stores. Erin replies, did you look in my fridge? I've got a lot of Asian cooking stuff in my fridge. And then they ask her, okay, all right, are we likely to find more of that kind of stuff in your Mount Waverly address? And she says, no, I did a big clean out of the pantry and the fridge the last time I was there because I've got to sell that place. And he replies, okay. And she replies, so the pantry and fridge there will be empty. Yeah, empty. And they say, okay, so you want to sell that place, all right? Earlier at the house, we had a conversation about that place, and you told me you were kind of holding on to it because your son would be going to uni in a few years. And, like, and she says, so the thought when buying it is because I went to Monash Uni and it's close to Monash Uni. And back when I bought it, well, I thought maybe he'll go there because he wants to be a pilot. He wants to go to Swinburne or RMIT or do a Bachelor of Aviation. So a house near there is no use. And they say, now the kids are going to a school. I've been having thoughts of selling Mount Waverly and buying something in a different area instead. So we've got a house close to their school. That's it. And they say, all right, no problem. obviously we've got concerns in relation to these mushrooms and where they've come from. And they ask her, is that something you've done in the past? Foraging for mushrooms? And she replies, never. And they say, or anything like that, never? And she says, never. And they say, all right, do you preserve foods or anything like that? And she says, no. They say, have you ever dehydrated food or anything? And she says, no. And they say, okay, all right, you've described to me your relationship with your ex partner, Simon, all right? I'd like to understand why you had his parents and his uncle and auntie over for lunch on the 29th of July. And Erin replies, because I've got no other family. They're the only support I've got left. They've been really good to me, and I want to maintain those relationships with them. In spite of what's happened with Simon, I love them a lot. They've always been really good to me. They've always said to me that they would support me with love and emotional support, even though Simon and I were separated. And I really appreciated that because both my parents are gone. She says, my grandparents are all gone. They're the only family that I've got. And then she says, they're the only grandparents that my children have, and I want them to stay in my kid's life. And he says, yeah, I understand. And they say, Erin says, that's really important to me. I think Simon hated that I still had a relationship with his parents, but I love them. And he says, okay. And she says, nothing that's ever happened between us, nothing he's ever done to me will change the fact that they're good, decent people that have never done anything wrong by me. And the detective says, well, so we've been told that on the 31st of July, so 2 days after the lunch, you went to the Leongatha Hospital, okay? And that you were only there for about 5 minutes and then you left. Can you explain why you went there for 5 minutes? And she says, yeah, I just went there thinking I needed a couple of bags of saline because I was really dehydrated. And they said, we want to admit you and send you to Melbourne. And she says, and when you've got animals at home and children who have, their own things, you can't just be told to drop everything and you're off to Melbourne overnight. So I had to go home and feed the animals and tend to my children. And he says, yep, okay. And she says, I did that. And then I went back. And he says, oh, okay. Who did you speak to? And she says, I walked in and there was like, I don't know, there was a nurse. It was like, I don't know, it could have been an enrolled nurse or there was like a helper person in the triage room, right? And he says, yeah. And she says, she said to me, are you okay? And I said, well, no, I have to run to the toilet. I've got diarrhea. And she wasn't quite sure where the toilet was. So she went and found it and showed it to me where it was. And then she said, I'll go and find someone. I'll get a nurse and doctor for you or doctor for you. And so I went to the toilet. I came back out and I was waiting in the triage area. And then a doctor came out, Dr. Webster. And the detective goes, yeah, continue. And Erin says, he said to me, sorry, we're going to be a little while because we've got a couple of critical patients in the hospital. And I said, that's fine. Don't worry about me. I'm just a gastro case. I'm not urgent, obviously. And he said, oh, what's your name? And I said, Erin. And he said, oh, we've been expecting you because there are other people you ate with on Saturday that are sick. And he says, okay. And Erin continues the story and says, they said, can you come through? And I said, sure. And I came in. And then he said to me, and she says, I can't say the exact words, but he said something along the lines of, we've got a concern they've eaten death cap mushrooms. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, that's what we think they've eaten. And then he started asking me about what food I served. And I told him. And the detective says, all right, I understand you went down to the hospital and you got treatment and that. What kind of treatment did you get? Erin says, well, they hooked me up to a drip for a little while. And they said, because we're concerned. So Dr. Webster had to leave. And I think it was at the end of his shift. And he passed it to another doctor, Dr. Foote. And she said to me, because the concern is everyone's eaten something that hurts your liver, we need to give you this protective medication. And so there was saline and acetyl something or another. I don't know. And he said, that's all right. And she says what it was, but she said, "We need to give you this and then put you in an ambulance up to Melbourne where they can give you more. I don't know what the word is, more where they can care for you better." And the detective says, "Yeah, continue." And she says, "So I got saline and this other stuff, and then I went into an ambulance." And the doctor says, "How long were you in the hospital for in Melbourne?" And she says, "Till Tuesday afternoon." And he says, "Okay, so Monday to Tuesday." Or, yeah, all right. And again, for full disclosure, so you understand, we've obtained warrants in relation to medical records for everyone involved in this. And so we will get medical records in relation to your treatment there as well. Erin replies, "Sure, okay." And they say, "You were at home and present when we did a search warrant today, all right? I know you weren't watching everyone all the time, but I just wanted to go through on tape some of the stuff that we've, and like I said, I'll give you a copy of this, but everything we've seized." And he goes on to say, "Kitchen, far left bottom drawer, instruction manual for a Sunbeam Food Lab electronic dehydrator." And he says, "What's this in relation to? Do you know anything about a dehydrator in your house?" And she says, "No." They say, "Okay, do you own a dehydrator?" And she says, "No." And he says, "No, all right, okay." She replies, "I've got manuals for lots of stuff I've collected over the years. I've had all sorts of appliances. I just sort of keep them all." And he says, "Okay." And he asks, "All right, when did you own a dehydrator?" And she says, "I don't know. I don't know. I might have had one years ago." And he says, "Well, what did you use it for?" And she says, "When I first got the Thermomix, I got really excited about like making everything from scratch. And I did a lot of like, like everything from scratch ingredients. I did a lot of that. So I could have had something like that." And they say, "On the kitchen bench, located against the wall, recipe tin eats book." And she said, "That's the recipe book." And she says, "That's the same book, the same." And they say, "Okay." And she says, "It's the same one the Wellington recipe came out of, yeah, all right? Then he says, "From the fridge, we got the fruit salad platter, which you pointed out." And she says, "Mm-hmm." And they say, "In the fridge in the butler's pantry, we got the white jug containing brown liquid, which you pointed out as well, all right?" And he says, "Well, so thank you for that." And he says, "From the study, we took a computer, we took another computer, and another computer." And he says, "All right, in the lounge, we grabbed an iPad in a black and red case." Um, and they say, "It's from the son's room. We've grabbed a computer." And she says, "Oh, yeah, it's an old one in the top of his cupboard." And they just say, "Okay, okay, yeah." And she says, "That's very old." And he says, "Okay, all right. So if I had to prioritize that, that would be the bottom of the list." And she says, "I don't think anyone's powered that one on for a very long time." And he says, "Okay, no dramas. All right. So we'll pop that one at the back of the list. All right." And then he says, "A black mobile phone." And he says, "I think that's going to be your son's phone, which again, I'll prioritize tomorrow for you." And she says, "Thank you." And he says, "Upstairs, bedroom 2, far left towards backyard, it says Erin's bedroom. So I assume that's yours, and it's an Apple iPad." She says, "I don't own any Apple iPads, so they would be tablets, Android tablets." And he says, "Okay, there's a Samsung tablet listed below that's located on top of a bed." And she goes, "Yeah." And they go, "Okay, maybe they got it wrong, and it's not an iPad, it's some sort of other tablet." And he says, "It's your daughter's tablet, and then an Oppo mobile phone, and your mobile phone." And she says, "Mm-hmm." And he says, "All right, so." And Erin replies, "All right, so the Oppo is my son's device." And he goes, "Yeah." And they say, "So you said a black mobile phone earlier?" And she says, "So that would be a Nokia. It's a really old Nokia. I've got for like, if you break your phone and you've got to send it away for repair, you need it, so I've got it, like, really, it's an old thing." And they say and they've got the son's phone and your mobile, and that would be the top. So and they say they've got a computer and another one that's a GeForce one, and, yeah, so they took a bunch of computers and things like that. Alright, and then they say here, "Oh, there's just one thing I wanna clarify to make sure I've got it right. You obviously would have seen me, taking notes. When you went to the Leongatha Hospital, you said you went in there and you got shown to a toilet, but you said you had to go home and pack stuff, and you had to deal with your daughter and that sort of thing, and feed the animals." And she says, "Mm-hmm." And they say, "When you had the conversation with Dr. Webster, was that when you first went there or afterwards?" And she says, "I don't remember." And they say, "Okay, okay." And she says, "I don't remember." And then they say, "Okay, that's all. The other thing that I should mention again, to your credit, police went around to your house on the morning of on the 31st, and they were obviously responding to the hospital call to check up on you. And they spoke to you on the phone and you gave them a PIN code for your gate." And she says, "Correct." "And you directed them to the bin where there was some leftovers." And she says, "Correct." And they say, "What are those leftovers that you directed them to?" And she says, "That was uneaten food from the lunch." And they say, "Okay." And they say, "So you helped them in getting that?" And she says, "Mm-hmm." And then they say, "So it could be sent?" And she says, "Because my kids ate that meal too." And they say, "Yeah." And she says, "But there was stuff left over and it went straight in the bin. So when I went to the hospital, they said they were concerned that everyone ate the same contaminated food." And I said, "Well, there's leftovers in the bin. You can have it." And I said, "You're free. Feel free to look through it." And then I said, "I'll go and get it if you want." And they said, "That's fine. You need to go on the drip. We'll call the police." And then I said, "Well, that's fine. Just let them. I need to give them a PIN code." And so they did that. And then a bag of food appeared a bit later. And the detective says, "So thanks again. Thank you for helping us locate that." And she says, "That's fine." And they say, "All right, Erin, do you agree the time is now 5:30 p.m. by my watch? I'm going to suspend the interview now." So there you go. That was the entirety of yeah. That was the entirety of Erin Patterson's police interview that she did on the 5th of August, 2023. And that was with the two police, yeah, 5th of August, 2023 on the Saturday. And that was with Detective Senior Constable Martin Alcade and his Detective Senior Constable. And they say and the other one was the one we've heard some evidence from over the last couple of days, Detective Leading Senior Constable Eppingstall. So there you go. That is the entire interview. I'm glad to bring that to you for the very first time on this channel. It we're a couple of days late, but at least we got there in the end. So I hope that was some information for you. Maybe you haven't been able to get that anywhere else. I don't know of anyone that's done a full rundown of that entire interview yet. I know people have done little quotes and things, but that was the entirety of it. And I can just tell you that the video we watched followed that script pretty closely. I've cut out bits and pieces where it's just repetitive, like okay, because we just don't really need to fully do that 20 times in 30 seconds. But the big pieces of information, they're all 100% accurate. They're what we heard in court, and they came directly from that police video. So there you guys go. Hey Robbie, how are you? Hey guys. Hey, just another human. How are you? Good to see you. Hey Sean. Julie's here. Joe Neal says late or earlier than usual? Both at the same time. You can be both late and early at the same time. Chipmunk, hey Chipmunk, how are you? Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. Wendy says too many morning chores and now I'm late. All right. So yeah, I don't have too much to add more than that, except for it's one of the first times we saw anything of Erin Patterson on camera. That was the first thing I think I've seen throughout, like something where she talks or interacts with someone. We've seen the BP footage and things like that, but this was probably one of the more in-depth things that we've seen throughout the trial. So, just another human says, "What wonder what her body language was like during the interview." I don't. I find it a little hard to know. Sort of just submissive is sort of the word I would use. Down, quiet. Those are all descriptions from watching the video. Is what I would give you, and you hear it in the responses that she gives. A lot of like, no, like that. It's very that's sort of the tone of the interview for a lot of it. Sometimes when she gives like some more detailed answers, she's a little louder, but it was very quiet. Like the way she spoke was very quiet. That's the descriptor that I would give from my watching of that video. Quiet and sort of, hunch forward a little bit like this and sort of just trying to answer these questions that the detectives are giving her. So there you go. Hey, Yuda, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, I'm sorry the other video, the one we just did before, didn't have a ton of information. A lot of that cross-examine was just moving over like receipts and things that I think I've done evidence on it before already. Timestamps, a lot of things about timestamps in the last 3 or 4 days. If I ever hear the word timestamp again, I might be too soon. Might be too soon. That and the word Amanita phalloides. If I ever have to say that word again after this trial, I will be. I might have to quit YouTube and go do something else. Julie said it was so short, it was surprising to me. Um, Let me just double check if there's a piece of information here that I can give to you. I will tell you this. This is the way I am going to word this, okay? Okay. I think I can word it like this. At the start of this interview, they ask Erin, "All right, Erin, do you agree the time is now 4:41 p.m. by my watch?" And then at the end, they say, "Yeah. All right, Erin, do you agree that the time is now 5:30 p.m.?" The video we watched ran for about 21 minutes. Those are facts. Those are facts. We were told it ran for 21 minutes. Those two bits of information come from the video that we watched. That's all I can tell you. So I'm sure you're all very smart people. Mike Bell, I cannot put that up, but I don't know about that. I heard some various things that people thought. People thought that she was very sad or something. Like I'm not sure. I wasn't in Erin Patterson's head at the time. I can just tell you that she seemed quiet. Quiet's the word that I would use. Quiet. But I would say, wouldn't most people be quiet in a police interview? I think no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the allegations are, I think, or even if you just a witness, if you're a witness for something, I think most people are pretty somewhat intimidated by police or whatever. I think most people would be pretty quiet when you've got two detectives questioning you. So, but that's the word I would use. Quiet is yeah. That's the word I would use if people want to know what it sounded like. So when I listened to it in court, it she sounded very quiet. So there you go. That's my description without getting into too much trouble. But yeah, so I told you those two details, and um, oh yeah, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. I'm sure anything that's entered into evidence or whatever is given to the jurors. Yeah, of course. I'm pretty like the way the court works. The evidence is not for the judge. The evidence is not for the defense. It's not for the prosecution. It's not for us, the media watching. It's all done for the jurors. Like this whole thing is done for them. Like we're there watching or whatever, but we're not. We don't like if there was a list of important people to the trial, it would go like Justice Beale. Well, no, probably like jurors, Justice Beale, prosecution and defense on the same level, and then 20 other people, and then the media. That's sort of the way I see it. The jurors are paramount. They are the most important people in this process because it's their job to find the truth. Not an easy job, and they've got a lot of stuff to look at and discuss at some point. So they will do all that when they get to that point in the trial, and they will go off and do their work, go off and do their deliberations with each other, and they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. What way will it go? Who knows? That's not for us to decide. That's for them, and we will respect their decision. They are the ones that were enlisted to help find the answers here, and they are doing their civil duty proudly. So good for them. Good for them, man. If we didn't have people like that were willing to step up and inconvenience their lives and things like that, then our justice system wouldn't work. Really, they wouldn't. Like, imagine trying to find 15 to 20 people, and you think about how many major trials there are every day in various parts of the city, the Supreme Court, the Magistrates Court, wherever, and there's all these people that have to come in and maybe have to be for like this trial next week will move into week 6. That's a month and a half that these people have had to do absolutely nothing but come to court every day. And I know I've done that too, but I'm not stuck in a juror's seat for however many hours per day or whatever. So if we didn't have good people like that were willing to inconvenience their lives, then our justice system would fall apart. We can only do it with the help of these people who are willing to put up their hand and say, I'm willing to do my civil duty. So that's how that works. Sean said, "What's the atmosphere like around the court now? It's getting closer to the ending. More spectators. It's definitely been busier. I think this week has definitely noticed an uptick in people. I won't say which areas or who or whatever, but I'll say that some days, some days like week 2 and the week 3, there was no line to get into court really in the morning. You just walk straight through security. This week, there's been lines and more media around and cameras, and the courtroom has been looking really, really burgeoning. There's been a lot of people in the courtroom. Like some days, there was a lot of spare seats in the gallery. Like when I was watching on our on like where I am, you could see people like leave, like they'd leave after lunch and then they wouldn't come back, and then there'd be open seats in the gallery in the afternoon. Not this week. It's been really busy, very very busy. I heard that there's been a bit of an uptick in, I guess, because people think it's getting closer to the deliberation point, and maybe they think they're going to miss out on their chance to view it or something. But it's definitely been busier this week. This week has been very very busy. Every Friday is a half day. Every Friday is a half day. So every Friday, court only runs from 10:30 till 1. So yes, tomorrow will be a half day in court. So yes, we do not have it. Today was the last full sitting day of week 5. That was it. Tomorrow's only about because they have a break. So there's a morning break that we get, but it's only like 10 minutes or something. So what do we get? 10:30, 1.5, 2.5, two. You get sort of like 2 hours. Sorry, that noise is so annoying. Sorry. Um, yeah, they sort of get around 2 hours on a Friday. It could be a little less, it could be a little more. It just sort of depends on what's going on, and yeah. Some days are different. Like today there was a lot of stuff going on in the background. Um, so it delayed like certain parts of the witness stuff. That happens some days, doesn't happen other days. Some days we have clean days where we just run through the whole day and have like 20 witnesses. So it's random every day. You never know until you get in the morning and sit down and then start hearing everything and you're like, "Oh, okay, it's going to be that type of day." And you just sort of along for the ride. We're just there for the ride as media. We just sit down and whatever happens, happens. It's got nothing to do with us. We are just spectators of the actual process. So maybe that's a possibility. I mean, there is a couple of hours tomorrow. They might be able to get through it. Otherwise, we'll be back Monday. And then, well, how does it work? Something like the prosecution might finish, and then I'm not sure what happens after that, but happen early next week, most likely. Fridays, they don't tend to book anything too severe because there's no time. There's no like full day to get through, something super important because they've only got 2 hours. So I would be looking to Monday or Tuesday next week for any kind of uh, new developments. That's the way I'm gonna word it. I wouldn't be looking to Friday. Fridays are always sort of the way I would describe it is sort of like, finishing up the housekeeping for the week. So they sort of just kinda get everything they try and sew everything up and try and make sure that Monday's a brand new week, and they're gonna do whatever else on a Monday. So, I believe she does. But I don't know anything about them. I can't put that question up on the screen, but I'll just say I do I think she does, but I don't know anything about them. That's all I'll say. Have I seen them? I have no idea. I could walk past certain people and I'd be like, no idea. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I've walked past certain people that have been witnesses or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people at the courthouse, a lot of people, especially at lunchtime, in the morning, and then when court breaks in the afternoon, you're talking like a movement of about well, you got about 40 journalists, about 40, 50 people from the gallery, and then you've got, legal people and stuff like that. So you're talking like close to about 100 people that are all moving around. So you probably walk past people. I probably said hello. I probably bumped into people and said, "Oh, sorry about that." I probably have, but I have no idea who they are. Like I'm not good at recognizing faces or whatever. So I know there's been people there because they've been witnesses. So, but if I've bumped into them or been next to them, I'd have no idea. Sean says, "Do they need all but two juror votes for a conviction in Australia?" Um, I don't know how this one will play out. I think we'll find out. So at some point, Justice Beale will give his charge to the jury. I will probably find out more about that type of thing when he does that. That's sort of when he gives his direction to the jury. He explains the evidence and sort of gives his direction to them. They call it the charge. to the jury, but that'll happen right near the end. That'll not the end. It'll happen right before the jury are set to go into deliberation. So if you hear someone saying, "We expect Justice Beale to give his charge today," that is right before. So, but I have not heard anything about when that'll happen. Nothing. Don't know. Right now, we're still in the phase of there's witnesses to get through, and there's the defense, what they want to do after, if they want to do stuff, they got all the time in the world to do their thing. So, Anna says, how long after the witness evidence is finished do they have to make a decision? There is no time frame in Australia for a verdict. No time frame. They could be like 4 weeks if they want to. They could be several, weeks. They could do a year if they wanted to. But normally after a few weeks, they sort of get to a point, not even a few weeks, more like a week. They sort of get to a point where they know where the allegiances are in the jury room, and they work hard to try and find common ground, but sometimes they get to a point where they just can't move forward anymore. Like they've hashed it out, they've gone through things, they've taken votes, they've tried to, you know, see each other's point of view and try and find common areas where they can, build a bridge to each other's kind of point of view. But sometimes they just get to a point where they're just like, no one's budging. No one wants to move off their, point or whatever. And you get a hung jury. So that's what you get. You'll get a hung jury, or you'll get a verdict. So they're the two things that normally, but so that's why they don't normally tend to go for super long, even though there is no time limit. It just sort of ends up in one of these two places pretty quick. It's like a week, 2 weeks maybe, but normally within the first week you'll get an answer. One like hung jury, verdict, not guilty, guilty. Like you'll get something along those lines. The judge can give direction too, so they may come back to the judge and say, "Oh, we're having trouble getting to a verdict, blah blah blah," something, and the judge might be like, "You are smart people. You can go back and deliberate for a little longer, and really try and understand your fellow juror," like something like that. And by what they're saying is try and work together to fix problems or something like that. And sometimes it works. Sometimes they go back and they deliberate for a little bit longer and they get to a verdict. Sometimes they come back another day or two later and they're just like, we're at the same point we were 2 days ago, and there's no other option. They just say we can't get a verdict and we can't go the other way. So they're sort of hung. So we'll see, we'll see. Hey Karen. Karen says you're doing a fantastic job, Ping. Thank you for doing this, from a Melbourne girl. Hey, good to see you. I don't know who recommended me out of the art community, but I've had a lot of graphic artists and people who do like deviant art and things like that following me for some reason. I don't know who put me forward, but thank you to that person. It's nice to meet people from a different community. It's cool. I like it. I'm surprised the jury was not sequestered. This jury, it will be sequestered. They're not sequestered right now, but when they go into deliberations, they will be sequestered. So it's sort of like a 50-50 one on this one. They're not during the trial, but during deliberations, they will be. They'll be put away for however long it takes to get them there. Anna P says, "What happens with a hung jury?" You get basically a mistrial. So it basically means no verdict because they can't come up with one. And what happens after that is it goes back to the DPP, and that's the Department of Public Prosecutions, and they get an opportunity to retry the case. They don't always do it. it just depends whether they think their case is good enough, whether they have anything to work on, whether they could present it in a different way and try again. If you look at Jared Hayne, so if you remember Jared Hayne, the footballer, he had three different trials. Couple of them ended in a hung jury. One ended up in a guilty verdict or something like that. Yeah, they tried him 3 times over those allegations, against that, young lady. So, they can even if you get a hung jury, they can try again, and then if they get another one, they can try again. They don't normally do more than 3. So, if you end up somehow into 3 trials and you still don't have a verdict, it's pretty uncommon for the DPP to try for a 4th time. So, I don't think I've ever seen a 4th go like trying for another trial. Normally they get to 2 or 3 and they're just like, no, they're not going to put the money into it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Karen says, I did comment on a channel that was reporting on this trial. I did tell that person to go watch you. Hope it wasn't my friend Hella, because I know Hella did a video today on this trial. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Does anyone have any last questions before I go for the night and enjoy my short day tomorrow? So, tomorrow, we normally do an update in the afternoon. You don't have to wait till this late at night. There'll probably be an update around 3 p.m. Australian time. So, if you're in Melbourne, about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, I normally do my Friday update and we sort of round up the week and sort of just close it all up. I know today was a little uneventful, and especially the first video I did, it was just a little yeah, just a little uneventful, but we're sort of just in that point in the trial now where some of the information has been said before. Some of it is same information but presented in a different way under a different question. And then you were sort of having the same witness over and over again because he's the informant. So there's a lot of stuff to go over with him. And they've been going from basically the start, like, so week 1 of this trial, they've been moving through all of the evidence with him, just everything. So it's sort of rehashing a lot of the things we know. Cross-examination is a little bit different. They're asking him some sort of slightly different questions about things, but yeah. No more questions, everyone's good? I will enjoy my half day, I will. Tomorrow's even though I am doing a half day tomorrow is actually a really busy day, which I'll explain tomorrow. When I know yeah, thanks, Yuda. Yuda sent in a donation. Thanks, my friend. I appreciate it. Julie said, "Thanks, Ping. Bye, everyone." Hey, do you like the new camera? So this is the new camera, by the way, for people who didn't hear it on the other show. This is the brand new camera. I don't know if I can bring up the thing. I don't want to move it around too much, otherwise you'll see how dirty my desk is. Yeah. Ah, that's not it. How do we do it? No. Oh, that didn't work. I turned the camera off. I'm still getting used to how this thing works. Yeah, can we turn it back on? There we go. It actually goes to sleep, like it goes to sleep. How do we get it? Oh, here. So you can actually move it down a little bit. See? And you can go up a little bit. It actually like pans and tilts and stuff. Look. You can go this way. You can actually move it around a little bit. So, yeah, there you go. The sound is good now. I'm glad we sort of fixed the microphone problem, which is great. The other day it sounded like this. So I'm just going to tell you about the trial today, day 21. That's exactly how it sounded. I was listening because every time I do a show for the trial, I listen to it after I get off the air because I'm hyper conscious about saying the wrong thing and having to edit stuff out. So I replay my own shows at the moment like 2 or 3 times to make sure I've heard it all and I'm okay with it. But the other night, Monday or Tuesday, it really sounded like I was talking like this behind like something like it was really muffled. and I was like, I couldn't figure it out what was going on. But I did like a full reset, re-imported all the firmware, loaded up all the software for this thing again, and it seems to have been okay now. It's nice and clear. I listened to the show from last night, and it was nice and clear. So hopefully that is now fixed, and now we have the new high 4K camera. This is a new 4K camera, so it's a lot more clear than the old one. It's got a good angle on it too. It's much more like head on, as the other one sort of used to have an angle sort of on the side, like pointing this way. So you'd often get a weird profile view of my head. Actually, the microphone's a little high. It would sort of give like a weird profile view of my head. So this one's much better. So I'm actually in front of the camera, which I like. Hold on, guys. Let me check something. Oh, Yuda, that's very kind of you. I will feel better. I think I would describe it like this. You're running a marathon and it's like a 20K marathon. We're sort of at like the 17K point in the marathon and you're just like, this sucks now. Everything hurts. I don't want to run anymore. My feet are blistered. I'm tired. That's sort of where we are. We're sort of at that point in the trial now. We're sort of in this everything hurt. I heard this phrase. So if she's watching, Miss A, I'm not going to give out her name, but Miss A, or Mrs. A, maybe, I don't know. I think it is Mrs. A, to be honest. Um, she gave this analogy to a bunch of the media, and she's like, everything hurts right now. And I was like, it sort of does feel that way. It's sort of, and that was a week ago that she said that, and we're still going to be, uh, we'll be back on Monday. We'll be back on Monday, I think. I'm very convinced that it's, we're going to be back on Monday for week 6. Oh my god, I really thought it was going. I thought we are going to finish early. I really really thought we are going to finish in like week 4 or 5, and it hasn't worked out that way. It's just quirks of trials. Quirks. That's the only way I can tell you. Quirks of trials and timelines. Sometimes things sound like they're very simple and they get more complex and things happen and dolphins happen and rainbows and things. Who knows? But yeah, we're going to be back on Monday. That's it. We're going to be back on Monday for week 6. What day will it be? Tomorrow's 23. Monday will be day 24. 24 days of trial so far. It's crazy. 24-day trial so far. We may get to 30. We may get to 30 total days. That would be mental. What is it asking me for? Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I want to thank Sean for all the lunches throughout the trial. It's been I'm very thankful for it. It's especially when you're in a, because we get a really big lunch break. We get about, oh, I don't know. We get between an hour and 15 minutes and about an hour and 25 or an hour and a half, depending on what's happening, depending on what day it is. And it's a big break. And for the first 3 weeks of trial, I just sort of walked around during lunch, and I was like, "Nah, I'm not gonna eat. I don't like eating during the daytime." And then this week, I decided to have lunch at court, and it has been helping. I've been getting through the day a little bit better, not as absolutely exhausted by 5 p.m. So, I mean, it's 11:30 p.m. right now, and I'm still going. So, all right. Happy you're reporting. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, let's get out of here for the night for day 22. I hope this was a good video. It gave you a lot of information about that police interview, and yeah, I hope that is gives you some insight into what the jury saw and what we saw in it. I know there's been a little bit of reporting here and there on it, but you guys heard everything. That is all of it. There's nothing else. There's no hiding. There's no facts that weren't said. That's all of it. That's from start to finish. So you guys got the entire thing on this channel with Nights with Ping. All right, let's get out of here. My name's Nights. My name's Nights? No. My name's Ping. This is my channel, Nights with Ping. We've been reporting from the Erin Patterson trial since day one. And yeah, we do an update podcast almost every night. Tonight was a little short. Some nights we do like 3 hours. Some nights we do like 45 minutes. It just depends. But we're almost there, guys. We're almost there, I promise. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I would really appreciate it. That stupid number, that what is it called? Subscriber number. It gets us more opportunities to go do things to make content for you. I know it sounds really like a weird idea or something. It's sort of like when people go, well, you shouldn't date a tall guy just because he's tall, or like, guys shouldn't date thin women because they're thin or whatever. It's sort of like, well, you shouldn't just base YouTubers on a number that is below their channel. Same sort of idea, like, it's a bit silly. It should be based on the content that you see on the channel, not the number. But it just seems to be the way it works on YouTube. So if you can hit that subscribe button, I would appreciate it. I don't really ask anything of my viewers except if they can do that and hit the like button, the thumbs up button. That's all I ever ask for. And hello to all the new people. I think we've had close to 270 people or something, 240, 250, something like that. We've had over 200 and something new people on the channel. So welcome to all those people. Hope you're enjoying the content. And yeah, sounds cliche, but it helps the algorithm. That's right. And yeah, good night to everyone. Karen Moss Art. You should check out her channel if you like art. You should do that. By the way, before we go, I keep forgetting to do this. Oh no, where's my friend? Oh, here. My friend Dr. Michelle has a channel, and if you are interested in it, it's all about she's probably going to kill me because I'm going to say the wrong thing. She's like acupuncture and spiritual stuff. I don't know how to explain it, but if you like that thing, I like that type of like spirituality and like acupuncture and stuff like that. She's trying to get her channel up and running. I'll post a link on my Twitter. So if you have a interest in that and you want to see more, you should go to her channel and check her out. She's a very nice lady. I enjoy my talks with Dr. Michelle. Let me see. Where is her channel? I know I have it somewhere. I'll post it on Twitter. But yeah, she does like acupuncture and things like that. You're on Instagram? You should check it out. I'm happy to help people. No, not Crystal. I don't know if she does crystals. I don't know. Dr. Michelle, I think, does like alternate medicine, like natural neuropathy. Is that the right word? Talk to Dr. Michelle. She'll tell you. But I said I would at least mention it at the end of one of my shows for her because I know she's trying to do her channel. I wish I don't know. Oh, she does Oriental medicine, herbs, and massage. And yeah, Dr. Michelle, designed to heal. So I'll post a link on my Twitter to her thing. All right. Love you all. Have a great Friday out there. If you're in America, have a great Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, with some sort of updates. I have no idea what we're going to do. I'll see you then. My name's Ping. This is my channel, Nights with Ping, as you can see in the poster here. And Erin Patterson has been my obsession for over 2 years. We've been following it since day 0. And this is the only place you're going to get this type of coverage on YouTube for it. There's no one else doing anything close to this. So love you all. Enjoy the content. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everyone. Peace out. Bye.